Hello, welcome to Spilling the LoyalTEA. Spilling the LoyalTEA is a Digitas podcast, and I am co-host Melissa Berger, Chief Solutions Officer at Digitas.
Hello, so nice to be here with you for, I think, our last one for this year.
Yes.
Amy Lancy, the CEO of Digitas and the co-host of this amazing Spilling the LoyalTEA podcast with Melissa. I'm so happy to be here and having our lovely guests.
Yes, this is a special one. It's end of year. It's December. It is chaotic here in the city of New York. Super excited, though. We have two of our amazing leaders here with us today that we're going to let introduce themselves in a minute. But there's been a lot happening this year, and we're really here to talk about what's next. What do we see in the future? What's going to matter for our business and our clients?
And for me, I feel like there's been a theme of acceleration. Every channel matters, convergence of channels. So 2026 is shaping up to be an incredible year. So we're grateful you guys are here to tell us what you think worked in 2025 and what's going to matter in 2026. Because it's going to be, I think, maybe even as much chaos as today. There's going to be more of it next year. Yes.
All right. Let's hear some intros. Who are you and what do you do?
I'm John Kahn. I'm Chief Transformation Officer at Digitas. I'm very happy to be here. So in my role, I hold myself responsible for making sure that data and technology are at the core of everything that we do at Digitas, and that our capabilities are evolving at the speed of the marketplace, and what consumers and our clients are demanding in this wild landscape that we live in.
Wild.
Yes. All right, Atit.
Hey, everybody. Atit Shah, Chief Creative Officer for Digitas North America. It's fun to lead creative at a place like Digitas with our networked experiences proposition because, as you try to earn our right into people's networks, no two experiences look the same. So with Digitas Pictures, we're making full-length feature films. We've got big experiential platforms. We're doing in-flight gaming. We're doing, of course, the Super Bowl and social feed. And so the puzzles always stay varied in the best way possible.
Well, we're so grateful to have both of you. And let's get into talking about networked experiences. As we think about next year, I think it's important for everyone to know that, and Atit, you're particularly great at this, is how are we doing everything to surprise and delight our customers, putting them at the center and having great empathy for the consumers, which I think is a wonderful counter to everyone talking about AI all the time and how we're really doing things that matter to have meaning. And I think in 2026, we're going to see great balance between those two concepts.
Absolutely. I think so.
So it's no secret that the number one topic of 2025 has been AI. I am actually expecting a drinking game to handle and formally over the holidays, right? But I'd love to hear your perspective, John, because the hype is real. It's not Web3. What do we see in the future? What's the story in 2026 compared to where we've been?
Yeah, look, I think that obviously it's AI all the time. I think what's been really interesting this year is the way that AI has changed the way that brands are discovered, and beginning to change the way that brands are shopped. I think that, it sort of culminated, I think, Black Friday, Cyber Monday, when we saw an 800% increase in AI influencing purchase journeys. And so I think that, certain brands were experimenting this year as it related to driving LLM discovery and discovery in traditional search, but also generative specific search. And I think next year it's going to become an imperative from a commerce perspective, because while this year consumers began leveraging those tools to inform their shopping, I think that next year we're going to start to see agents actually executing purchases.
Ooh. Big prediction. Heard it here.
When you think of predictions in addition to AI, what is the one thing that you think marketers got wrong in 25 so that they can get it right? If we think the agents are going to shop for all of us while we're sitting here on this podcast, part of that is getting the foundations right to some of the things you said. Mm-hmm. So what is the one thing to all the marketeers, based on your transformation point of view, that you have to really get right now so that you can be in a favorable position for the next?
Yeah, look, I mean, AI is going to be a driving force of much of the way that content is developed. And I think that this year was interesting because I think marketers and agencies got better at using AI to make stuff. But I think that just making stuff is not enough. and it's not necessarily providing the best consumer experience in some cases. So I think 26 is going to be about using AI generated content more intelligently, making sure that you're only making the content, you're not making too much content, that you're making the right content for the right people. And I think importantly, moving from the notion of personalization at scale to humanity at scale, and that every touch actually feels like an empathetic one.
Mm-hmm. And in that, in order for this to be a game changer, we often talk about the data foundation has to be right. And you really can't get to the concept of personalization or really higher order empathy. Talk a little bit about that, because for me, the observation is we have, our marketeers that say we want to figure out how to do AI to leverage AI to do more things. Mm-hmm. But if they've skipped the data part, the data maturity has to get there. So I'd love to hear you talk a little bit about that.
It's absolutely critical in two ways, I think. One is the consumer understanding, and the other is brand fundamentals. So I think that, and I alluded to this before, in order to make sure that every touch feels like an empathetic and human one, you have to know humans better than anybody else. You actually have to know who you're talking to. So putting the right first-party, third-party data at the core of what you do is absolutely critical to make the right type of impression. And then I think from a brand perspective, I think that it's really important that the data asset management is where it needs to be. If your LLM of choice is not pulling from the right brand assets, you can make all the stuff you want, but it's not necessarily going to build brand. And so I think that marketers are on a journey, and I think we're going to be able to get sharper on those points in 26.
Yeah. To the point on building brand and empathy, I get to ask my co-host a question. I mean, this is a whole podcast about loyalty. And there is it's a great connection to what you said around the more we know about you, the more we can get you to be more and more loyal to a brand. And those things really go together. And that means I think about the brands that I'm most loyal to. They also feel like they're my best friend, and they're like gently nudging me on what the next thing might be. So do you want to talk a little bit about your view for addressable relationships and what's next in 2026?
Well, we've been talking a lot about the importance of the data foundation, as you said. And I think a lot more brands are realizing the importance of it. So if you're loyal to a brand, it is because you feel like you're understood. You feel like it's, delivering value. That's been a hot topic lately around the value and the mutual value. And I think what's really interesting on the loyalty space is that brands that fail at that, you're blacklisted, right? There's no coming back from it. So as we're starting to see, we've talked a lot about, loyalty 3.0 being really about those shared experiences. A quote I saw recently was around media got smarter and people are lonelier. We talked about that this weekend. And I think that's a really important point for us to think about how we're actually engaging, interacting, and thinking about how we use data. If a customer gives it, they expect you to use it. And not enough brands are doing that well. So I do think we're going to start to see people unsubscribing, not shopping, not engaging if brands are misusing any sort of data and information about them.
So we bring back the promise of networked experiences. How do we think, and I agree that more is not more, and we do have lonely people.
Yes.
And to me, our focus at Digitas is really around understanding the consumer or the customer and really sounding them around the word that I think was a hit different this year, which is peso. So talk a little bit about, I've heard it about 1,000 times.
Right.
I mean, I think we need a drinking game about peso and AI.
And AI
comes up.
How they come together. Then they have a baby.
Which would be peace. I don't know what that would be. But talk a little bit about that and how not only is it around knowing consumers better, but also surround sounding them to be able to make them loyal so that every moment is a meaningful moment.
Yeah, every moment matters. So yes, peso is another drinking game word. Paid, earn, shared, and own, for those who don't know. And what, again, we're seeing, it's really this kind of like disconnected experiences, which is why networked experiences is such an important proposition. At the end of the day, when you're shopping, the last thing you want is the dead end. So agent shopping for you is great, right? That's an important part of the future of peso. And for brands, what we see, we did the Forrester research a few years ago. Remember, Amy? And CMOs said that is the number one thing that they are missing is the connection between purchase and commerce data, and their CRM data. Shoppable commerce, a lot of the time, is stupid because you just bought the thing, yet you're still being targeted. Money is being spent. So we talk about less waste, more efficiency, and a better customer experience. So that's why I really think the importance of the connection of Peso, connecting the data sources and the foundations, is critical. If you don't do that, we're going to continue to just see sales drop off, and agents are just going to be shopping for everybody and making their own decisions on where not to buy.
It is interesting to think about agents potentially being the new dead end, right? And, we haven't really, I just sort of thought of that as we were sitting here, but that's a new end point that you really need to get the loop connected in the places that you're shopping so that you really can continue the conversation. We had a client that challenged us on the concept of moving from impression to shelf as fast as possible. How do you live in the in-between? And the in-between in that case is loyalty.
Yep.
And the more you know about them and their preferences, the more you can move them faster when they see something for the first time because it's something that's more, inherently appropriate for them.
Yeah.
I think.
Go ahead, John.
I just think another reason why this is so critical, what you're talking about, is it is hopefully your most ardent fans who are creating the content that the LLMs and generative engines are reviewing in order to surface the answer you want for your brand. And so that's critical now as people are seeking more answers versus search results. And it's going to be even more critical when agents are the ones who are actually acting on consumers' behalf. So it's really going to be, what did your biggest fans say about you? And are they active? That's going to be a huge source of discovery in commerce.
Yeah. One thing that has been coming up a lot lately is just around like best examples of loyalty and, different use cases. The reality is all we do all day, this whole team, all of Digitas, is we're loyalty marketers. At the end of the day, our goal is to get consumers, customers, prospects to buy our services, our products, our offerings. And at the end of the day, it's not all about a loyalty program. So I want to make sure we're like reminding ourselves that at the end of the day, all of what we're doing is to drive brand loyalty. Sometimes that's through a program, sometimes it's not. So I think it's just a good reminder for all of us that ultimately as a marketer, our job is to drive brand loyalty.
So is that your one big thing? What's your one thing to make sure you're doing that? And in my nerd business mindset, it would be, how do you focus more of your energy so that you're spending all of that time in owned versus continuing to rent the space in another channel in Peso, for example? What is your one trick in 2026 you must do so you can get to that nirvana of loyalty?
Well, it's hard. It's like it's simple, but it's difficult, which is truly like the actual connection of the underpinning from a data perspective. Because again, you go back to like the shoppable commerce is dumb. At the end of the day, if they're purchasing, you're spending money on retargeting them. The other piece I would say, so you said one thing, sorry, two things. Retention starts the second we know who someone is. Period. The end. Retention starts day one. So I think not all of our clients and even us at times don't do this very well. So if you start retention, the second we know who they are, you're not letting them leak out of the system, be in that leaky bucket, and you're going to have to go back to them again.
I love the ideas of retention starts on day one, which leads me to the most important part of our business, which is big ideas and creativity. So with that in mind, Atit, what do you think is going on in terms of how is creativity evolving and what, really delighted you in 2025 and where are some places you think to plan in 26?
Yeah, I mean, I think as we're seeing the ubiquity of AI and we're seeing, we can vomit. We talk about AI at to such length. And, listen, it's been
your favorite time.
It's been a huge supercharger of productivity. Teams use it day in and day out. The fluency is, off the charts that's happening right now. But we're seeing, as John talked earlier about humanity at scale, I think we saw it in 25 and we're going to continue to see it, which is almost this hyper longing for human feels, right? And I'm not just talking about emotional storytelling. I'm talking about the imprint, even the elusive, hard to pin down thing that says humans were here, So a couple of things that kind of are beacons of that. Just in recent in the recent months, like starting at Kahn, there have been 3 films by 3 major tech platform telecoms that all involve puppeteers and puppets and critters and stop motion, like in a Wes Anderson kind of way. Apple just did critter carols. Infinity just did a spot with called for Imagine That with rabbits that they did with the studio that did Fantastic Mr. Fox. And the Grand Prix at Cannes this past year went to, for in the Filmcraft category, went to a telecom brand that, again, used like, these critters and these puppets in a way that, oozed charm and oozed vintage kind of storytelling. And that's not just a mistake that three big brands in the comms and platform and telecom space chose to go to such a distinctive and handcrafted route around something as rooted and earthbound as lovable creatures, right? It's a state of the times. We all want the imprint of a sense of place, right? The second thing is a huge sensorial explosion. We, as a company, have been helping, luckily, nerds, launch this platform called Unleash Your Senses, about to show up in its third Super Bowl. But more than film, the gummy monster, which is a central character, we want to feel every unctuous detail of the character, the way it sounds, the way it moves, using haptics on phone so you could shake Gummy Monster to get an incentive. We're driving Crave through a true appreciation of the senses, and our partners at the community are using scent for Bath and Body Works to drive a holiday campaign that brings an idea that was in the 50s and 40s, smell-o-vision it was called at the time. They have an idea called scent-o-vision, which they're taking in cinema so people can actually feel the gift buying and gift presents and things like that. And so that's by trait, this sensorial explosion. And finally, sometimes it's about not shouting the loudest. When we talk about the human feels, it's about being guardians of the human feels. The people who win from a brand standpoint might be the brands with the dimmest screen, with the most soothing voice. Our crew from Digitas Pictures just launched a film for Sensodyne called Sensory Overload that was all about the new perils of the world around us when it comes to neurodivergent spectrum of people. And how do we have to be far more attuned to that? And I think that trend's only going to continue. One last thing in that same vein is for Walmart. We launched Ambient Rooms, which is an entirely different shopping experience because it encouraged commerce during the holiday times, not by bombardment, but by the soothing feeling of the Yule log, and being in these rooms that are outfitted for the ambience of shopping in a far cozier setting. So it's modulating the feels. It's the imprint of humanity. It's the sensorial explosion of I really want to feel something that an algorithm alone can't give me, that we're starting to see. And that's encouraging. We're going to see this, the analog and human imprint paired with this explosion of agility in a different kind of way. And I think even from a loyalty standpoint, that's a great opportunity for all of us.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. We talked about the future of AI. John talked a little bit, and you started to get at this a little bit, Atit, just around kind of like the intersection or the convergence between AI and creativity. There's a lot of speculation, right? And a lot out there of like, AI-driven, visuals and imagery. There's a fine line. So I'd love to kind of hear your thoughts on how you see them coming together and how, as Digitas and networked experiences, you see it really evolving from a consumer perspective.
I tip my hat to the group because I think just recently we all saw case in point of what happens when it's not such absolutes. It's not all like we have to be all in on AI or we have to be staunchly anti-AI. They created a film for the 100-year mark that used live action, extremely talented creative minds and production minds, and AI, of course, to fill out a pretty epic film about the ongoing battle, somewhat victorious, of Publicis to survive during different times. And people have all the feels. There's AI in all the scenes, but at the choicest of moments, narrative and otherwise, there's a human presence and someone mined for the human story that people were going to feel for. And that guardianship is, I think, going to show up in lots of ways beyond film. But that sense of guardianship for, are we making humans feel or not? That's going to be the question. Yeah. The AI is a given at this point. It's just more like, but we have to modulate and use it in the right kinds of ways and capacities and keep human intention out front.
Amy, I always have what you said about Vincent in the back of my mind. I don't know why it stuck with me so much when he's like, "Mom, not AI."
Yeah.
Right. So, but really, if a 12-year-old can spot it, it's something that as a marketer you want to think about. There are times and places for it, and brands saying this is AI generated. The transparency makes a difference. Mm-hmm. But I think when people straight up are like, "Oh, I thought that was real and it's not," it can be very quickly dismissed. So I think the transparency is really important.
I think transparency is important. I also think that the litmus test should be, is it being used in service of humanity.
Yeah.
And that can be a human story, that can be human capability. But I think if the 12-year-old is saying that's AI, something tells me that the way it's being used is not in service of a human experience, one that's worth coming back to. And that's why I do love the Publicis Group 100-year video example, because the fact is you can't tell that story the way it was told. You can't get those feels without the technology.
Right.
And that's a good time to use it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, his reaction, as you know, I use my children for my job. So thank you to them if they're listening, which they're probably not. Is he and I were watching TV and this certain spot came on and he said, "Why did they have to do that?" And your point is exactly right. It was a fine thing, but he didn't say, "Oh, this is wonderful and we should go buy this thing." His point was, why did they have to do that? Because in his mind, it could have been a better story. And you're exactly right. And that story could have been done in with the combination of AI tools, but it lacked storytelling.
Yeah.
So it had no emotional appeal. It was sort of just done for the sake of doing it, which I also think is what I think was the unfortunate events of 25. We've all seen the things that you see and you're like, why did they do that? And it's because someone told them they should use AI for marketing, but they didn't really have a strategic thought on the time, attention, and also the cost of doing that, because now he's most likely not going to love this brand because it wasted his time.
Yeah.
And I think that the use of AI in that way and the lack of storytelling, that really becomes a fast move to get to the opposite of retention, which I think we need to all be really careful about, because we are in the business of time and time and attention, especially in younger generations, especially in streaming and all of that, even if they have ad supported, which we do in my household, of course, that it really matters if they're actually making the time to watch something.
Yeah, absolutely. What is your number one prediction for 2026?
My number one prediction for 2026 really is attached to our offering of networked experiences. And we've touched on a couple of the points. It's so important to have, I'll use your phrase, a multimodal approach here to break through and surround sound the consumers. In 2025, there was a lot of conversation around fandom and, the sports obsession, which is fantastic, I think highlights for me that our job and our focus at Digitas and the promise of networked experience is really earning your way into the heart of the consumer so we can make super fans of whatever that thing is. And it's really important to do it in all the ways to deliver this multimodal experience, which is peso, but in a more, delightful way in terms of how do I own the ear? How do I own a smell of a brand? How do I bring this, this to life in a way that breaks through and that consumers remember and make that emotional footprint, emotional connection? And it means all of these things working together as a system. So brand has to work as a system and putting together the old and the new to be able to really do well. And that means AI, that means all the things we've talked about. But that is our job, is to really figure out how we break through with consumers, earn our way in, and ideally move them from the first time into loyalty. So it all has to work together as a system. If you do that correctly, you will be building an incredible growth engine. And ideally, it's learning about the consumer. So the next time is even more profound, more delightful, and more intimate.
Yeah, I love it. We packed in a lot. And after a very busy several days. So thank you for being here. We love to always ask at the end, what brand you cannot live without? What brand are you going to stay married to? John, you want to go first?
I'm going to go with Celsius. I've been starting my day with a Celsius at the gym. And my days have been pretty good since I started doing that. So
flavor though is
you know what's interesting about that, Melissa? I try to have a different flavor every day.
Do you?
Yeah. I change it up.
Interesting.
Change it up. Keeps things interesting.
Like stars on the ones you like best?
Nope.
Okay.
Just new. Variety.
I love it. Okay. Celsius, everyone.
Fantastic.
I love it.
A lot of caffeine.
Yeah.
I mean, Amy talked about sound a bit. I mean, I'm glued and married to Spotify. I have to say, it's like, from
married.
Glued and married. Like from the morning, whether it's like wrap caviar, on the treadmill or something, or it's the daily when I'm shaving, or it's any number of things. Like, I mean, I have a lot in soundtrack at all times. So It's got to be Spotify.
I love it.
Can I ask, what was your rap age?
Yeah, I'll say it embarrassingly. I'm not actually embarrassed. Why not? I'm gonna proclaim it with pride. It was 73 years old.
Oh,
Nice.
cool.
Old soul.
You know what mine was?
What?
17.
Yeah, that doesn't surprise me. I was going to say 22, but right, 17.
I don't know if that's good or not.
I don't.
It's just there.
You're just a
I'll just put it out there.
Yeah, I love it. All right, Amy, what is
Yes.
your brand? You cannot live.
My brand I cannot live without is Delta. All the things we talked about, I love Delta. It gets me. It helps me get where I want to go. It makes my experience seamless. I just love everything about it. And I also just love the surprise and delight things that Delta is doing.
Incredible.
That feels like they understand me, like the relationship with Uber, etc. So that's my fan favorite that helps me get to the places we need to go.
I love it. I mean, again, all the brands we talked about, even the way you talk about them, the kind of emotional connection, right? And even just like the shared experiences, right? Like you're at the gym, you're drinking your Celsius, you're listening to it while you're engaging, in the mornings with your family. You're flying Delta with, whether it's business, coworkers, someone you don't know, or your family. And I think it's all about how it brings you all together. I don't think any of you will be surprised when I other than, of course, Amy knows, living in Atlanta, it's impossible not to be a lover of Delta. But Nike is a brand. I'm younger than I feel. And we talked about last night, I can't wear heels anymore. And so I think like the lifestyle and vibe I can get from Nike, where I still feel good. I feel like I look professional, but I am comfortable. Everyone knows I have my metallic gold sneaks on tonight. They were a hit at the party. But ultimately, I think it's a brand that makes me feel good. And it's important. And between Jake and I, we got about 250 pairs of sneakers at the house.
Right?
Oh yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. It's his obsession is stronger than mine, but we're there. So anyway, it's just a brand that I've always loved, and I go in their app way too often. So you're welcome, Nike. Black Friday was hot.
Okay, well, that's it. That brings us to the end of our special edition of Spilling the LoyalTEA. Thank you so much, John and Atit, for joining us.
Thank you.
And for helping all of us get ready, wrapping up 2025. Let's do it, and getting ready for 2026.
Fantastic.
Thanks for joining us, and please follow us on Spotify. Share with your friends. Be sure to follow. Next year, we are going to have some great episodes. Of course, we're going to be spilling the tea at first in CES or at CES in Las Vegas. So look for us in January. Happy holidays to everyone.
Happy holidays.